in the system you have something called the unknown country. Are you familiar with that?
Yep.
The Man of World Holding Trust is the unknown country. So it is the source and the holder of the entire asset redemption program. It is where all of the assets on the planet have been registered. If you sound like you would know some people that have done private contract work, and when they would do private contract work, they would receive a little black book. They would get an account number, and they would keep their own ledger, and they would put the amount they received for that job. Those accounts are all kept on the back ledger. Any contract work done, the individuals doing contract work would take the account number that was given to them by some clandestine character and an amount. They would put it in that book. And in 2007, all of those accounts were shut off, and no one has accessed them since. They were shut off because every asset on the planet was registered into the unknown country. In 2012, the contracts for that expired. When all of those contracts expired, the ownership of that trust transferred over to the one individual on the planet whose DNA matched the signature that would allow that to open, and that was Kimberly Ann Gogan. And Kimberly Ann Gogan. Kimberly Ann Gogan. Kimberly Ann Gogan has blue sky clearance, if you're familiar with clearance levels. Okay. She also has the highest level Homeland Security clearance on the planet. She also has her own, within the trust is every major trust for every major bank in the world. And this is the entire off-ledger system. So currently, the face of the banks are still somewhat, I say loosely under control, because everything that they have tried for the past 7 years has failed miserably. They have tried to hack the trust hundreds of thousands of times, nonstop, every day, in some way, shape, or form. Every single time that they said there was going to be a currency revaluation, they always tried to hack the trust to bring down assets. They've never made it past the first firewall. So that is the system that she controls. Currently, after, just in the past year, I've been part of billions of dollars of transfers that has exposed the entire banking system. We literally have it on film from the transfer room when Bank of America, we transferred $180 million in, and they sat there trying to figure out and concoct how they were going to steal the money. I've watched them do this several times. I've had money confirmed in our accounts, and then just to have them try to steal it. They cannot steal it. Kim just pulls it back. They don't have the ability to steal from her. But because the face of the banks have been controlled by this nefarious cartel of bankers, and also they have MS-13 / Blackwater / whatever they're called now, mercenaries that are implanted in a lot of these banks. They're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure the money does not get to the people. Our sole mission and purpose is, as of 2012, they were given a 5-year extension. In 2017, the trust switched over to disbursement mode. They had until 2012 to basically turn the world into a one world government, essentially launching a genocidal agenda of some sort. And by 2017, they completely failed. They were given a 5-year extension. Since 2017, the trust has been in disbursement mode, and she has overcome most of the major world obstacles in that time. So now, the way the current system is that all of the back doors have been closed. They can no longer siphon money off from anyone. They were siphoning off from every credit card transaction to every major transfer to just taking people's life savings. And for a long time, they would leave up mirrors. In the Wells Fargo system, all types of people had SKRs that were sitting there in mirrors, and they were never able to move them because they weren't real, because the real asset that backed them was removed, because they would steal that from regular people. All of that has been shut down, that they can't do that anymore. The only thing left is the actual face of the bank. When a transfer comes into an account, there's still an operation that goes on at the banking level that they can move the money out of the account and put it somewhere else. And but Kim right now can move the money directly into an account. And that's would be the first time, because usually when money comes in off the back ledger with an allocation number of some kind that can be cross-referenced at the U.S. Treasury, that would normally what would happen is they would put it to a trading platform, they would take the asset, and they would give back bank credits. And this is all part of a larger plan to essentially take over the entire financial system, doing away with physical currency, replacing it with, digital, making everything digital, so that they would become the ultimate regulatory authority on all the entire financial system. But in actuality, it would have encompassed governments as well, because it would have taken away anyone's power to do anything, because they would control it all. So essentially, that's where we're at. I will tell you that every call I'm on, I'm very well aware that it's being monitored. Matter of fact, I count on it, because it's people who are deceived within these agencies who are working to the other side and they don't realize. So I'm very conscious to educate every single time I talk, because everyone thinks that they are the boss of some magical trust that holds the world's assets. And I have been on the phone and been in meetings with no less than 24 of these individuals who think that they are the head of the Heritage accounts, the Rodriguez Trust, the Alpha Omega, the Dragon Family Trust. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, not one of them have access. There is one person on the planet who has access to all of these major trust accounts. Not one of these trust accounts is backed by assets that is not in the trust. Every single one of them comes back to the trust. Every government agency knows about this. You can run an intelligence background search on me in every single country in the world, and on Kim in every country in the world. On me and Kim. Kim is the Kimberly Ann Gogan. She's the trustee. But my organization is Create Change, and we do have an account there. So, my background has been run many times on these things. You might find a expired inspection ticket. Not unless they're fraudulent. And I'll stake my life on that. I would recommend just going. I mean, if you can run a straight check and you have somebody at that access point, I would run it through Homeland Security or, at the FBI can't. There's obviously, look, it's hard to say. Every single agency has two branches, right? You have the FBI and then No, I can actually. I have a letter from one of the contractors for Homeland Security who does cybersecurity for them. But it was made specifically for. It was identified for a specific transfer that indemnifies every bank in the world. But they went in and verified. Yeah, sure, of course. They work with Kim on a daily basis. But now the Pentagon, obviously has been going through a restructuring because of various things. But the gentleman who was about to be the new head of the Department of Defense, who stepped down because he was threatened that they were going to run a smear campaign about his son. I lost his name, but he was working directly with Kim, and he did what should have been done. He went to the terminal, and he asked him for verification of, the assets and control of the assets. On that level, Homeland Security, I'm sure they'll know, and I'm sure you probably know as well. You can basically go in through a process, and it'll ping, the trust, and Kim will respond. And when they open up the system, they will see her passport, her clearance number, all of those things will be there very clear for anyone to see. One of the things we run into a lot of times with people that aren't as thorough, obviously you're doing real checks, which is very important. In general, people they run a Google search, and her name has been smeared on Google by silly things like rip-off reports. There is another group called the Kingdom of Mana. They are a fraudulent group, but obviously, the order is masterful at creating, mimicking groups, right, that have a very similar name. Now, the Kingdom of Mana actually was set up by Kim originally. Her security was Jesper Ellerman for 4 years, and she appointed him as the Kingdom of Mana as a sovereign nation. I believe it's Jesper Ellerman, who later changed, and he was a fraud. He actually ended up being Peter Ellerman, and later changed his name to Michael Uriel. Now, he is referred to as the king of the Kingdom of Mana. But the Kingdom of Mana only exists because Kim gave them sovereignty. If your people have access, they can verify everything directly. We don't put out printed information because as soon as we do, they use it to try to create and leverage assets. So specifically what you need, I can give you a description, I can give you access codes, I can give you a contract so you can see her information. Now, I can even give you her passport if you'd like. But, it's just stuff that when you say top secret, usually people on the highest levels, the way they've kept this in place is because somewhere, on the highest level, even in the military, is someone working for the Jesuit order or, something like that that's in place already. So, and if you understand that, that's great, because let me just throw this one thing at you, because there's nothing, by the way, nothing at all on Kim. There's nothing, no record on her. There is, the reason why I mentioned the Kingdom of Mana is Kingdom of Mana has a fake Kim out there, and they've approached all types of countries. I did speak to the Ministry of Clearance and the representatives from the central bank in China last week, and also, I don't know if you've ever heard of the the International Federal Trading Tables, I think it's called, referred to as the tables. So in the tables, we went through a little back and forth with them, and they clearly had some interaction with the Kingdom of Mana and the Chinese elders, which Chinese elders are all just members of the Rothschild family. They're all just extensions of the dragons, and they're 36, I guess, of them that are the former members of the Dragon Family Trust. People have a lot of respect for them. They are all the ones who have tried to stop this. So they generally are considered to be kind of the highest level, the UN Security Council. So it's important to realize that. So they said some nonsense about Kim being investigated by Interpol, which is not true. There might be something to do with the fake Kim, because obviously this other group with Michael Uriel have gone around trying to present themselves, depending on who you speak to. Sometimes they say that Kim has been removed. Sometimes they say that Kim is working with them. So just give you that as a heads up,
You can't touch the Earth even if you kill me. Is that right?
That planet belongs to me. It is my right.
Not anymore.
You have no idea what you're doing.
I am making sure that whatever you do to me and my family, you're not able to do to anyone else's.
This is not a game. I am not my brother.
A caveat at the very end of all the paperwork that always referred to one individual. It would refer to the great dictator, the King of Kings. In the Federal Reserve paperwork, it's referred to as the Arbiter. This individual is Kim's predecessor, who was an evil bastard dead set on enslaving humanity, essentially. And it depends on who you ask. It's really something that's the names the titles I gave you are always there, or what has always been there. But So, but I mean, he's referred to as M. I mean, it's the M1 level. So, but essentially, when all this shakes out, he was replaced, and he has since passed away. And Kim is the first one at this level. She removed all the former trustees. So all the former trustees included, all the names we know not to trust, and it struck fear in the hearts of men all over the world, right? Like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. Right, yeah. So all of that whole group was trustees, and they always had access. Now, they all had these old code books, black code books and red code books and different things like that. And all those were manual entries. But in the 70s, I want to say like 1978, everything in the system that you probably know went digital. So all of the entries went digital. Now, when they went digital, the real power of those to control those codes went directly to the arbiter, right, or the comptroller. And so Kim erased all of their codes, and all of the allocations to different assets. She also changed all that around. All the money that was in the different vaults and bunkers, all of the different gold that was in those, that has all been moved because she's the only one who actually had access for the past 7 years of it. So the codes, from that standpoint, she makes the codes in real time. So when it comes to draining the swamp, quote unquote draining the swamp, the real swamp has always been the financial system because that's where they had their control base. And that has been drained. In reality, she's drained that. She's allowed them to devour their own assets, investing, trillions of dollars to try to stop her from bringing money to the people. Essentially, all of these things are contracts set up to enslave us, right? So, as the research gets done, one of the things that happens is these groups always had, at the very highest level, they had a gatekeeper of some kind who would block someone else, right? So, for example, there's a gentleman out there who used to be with the FBI. He has a documentary out. It's called Mr. Undercover, I think, right? And he was very prominent and impressive when he spoke like an FBI agent, right? And he was telling me how he completely transformed, the white-collar crimes division in the FBI. But he had no idea about anything I was talking about. So I knew he didn't really know as much as he thought, but he seemed to have connections. So in the first conversation, he was very cocky and very prominent. In the next conversation we had 2 days later, after he made some calls, he was terrified and wouldn't even deal with us. So, because he was threatened by somebody. Now, I will tell you, that is pretty common, and if that happens and you can't deal with it, that's fine. At the end of the day, the technology that Kim uses is about 1,000 years ahead of anything on the planet.
Since we've been actively pushing through all of these laws. Any bank using an IBM computer, as an example, had a back door to IBM. IBM was data collecting on behalf of the cabal. The security certificates, the SSLs, anything required, the banks have their own firewalls and all these systems, which they purchased from a third-party entity. The government also had the same thing. So to get from here to there, so far we've cleaned up hundreds of thousands of cyber hacks, which were implemented over that 40 to 50 year period, just to stop you personally and all of the yous out there listening to the call from receiving $1 from the trust. Because they know the second the people receive $1 and spend it, it's over for them. Because their control mechanisms are completely obsolete.
Yeah. As the beginning of the restoration, as it begins, there shall be a woman that shall rise up, a woman that shall be strong in faith.
Great confirmation. This information was just forwarded on to the CIA and to the president. The IMF is working directly with MS-13, and they sent MS-13 up to the safe zone there to assassinate Kim. I don't know why anybody would go there to do that, because from what I've heard, they show up to do one thing and they leave in body bags.
The devil shall be afraid of a woman. A woman anointed by God. A woman.
Won't matter. That shouldn't be an issue, but I just want to give you the heads up on that. There is no authority on the planet who is above Kim. You can prove that yourself. So I don't need to, explain. But my jaw will drop open for nothing or no one. Just so we're clear, because I've dealt with many people on very high levels who, top secret, clandestine groups, and I understand what you're saying, and I believe what you're going to do is do proper research, and that is what I want. So that's great. Yeah. So, yep. That's fine with me. I prefer it to be that way. At least I know that the research is being done. We've had many doors shut just with lazy research. So I will. I have to run. Very true. Yes, that's always. I'm very familiar with the gatekeepers, and obviously Kim keeps a lot of this stuff close to the vest. And I mean, she's really the primary focus. I just, I go out and try to find ways to assist everything she's doing. Yeah. So there is. She was identified by facial recognition software and the Looking Glass technology back in, early on. Maybe she was like 18, and from there, she wasn't brought on until she wasn't legally allowed to accept her position until she turned 40. But she was identified. There is contract. There was infinity agreements that were set up. That these exist on the higher levels, kind of above the government, right? That that allowed the families the order to do these things that we've all kind of accepted as normal, most people anyway. And those contracts expired, and they were made with the original 5 tribes of the planet. And so in 2012, those agreements expired, and the way that the contracts work is that there's a genetic anomaly that occurs approximately every 2,000 years, and that person would be the most bioidentical to the original humans on the planet, connected to all the tribes. And they identified that person as Kim with about a dozen different DNA tests and things of that nature. She's been recognized by church and state as 99.8% bioidentical to the original mitochondrial Eve. Maybe familiar with the haplo-K group. We're on the same page.
Hillary Clinton put out a contract on Kim's life last week to make sure to let Hillary Clinton know that she has absolutely no power or ability to kill Kim. Kim transferred a large sum of money into Citibank directly, the bank that the Clintons think they have control of, and they have tried every possible way to get a hold of that money, and it's sitting there, and people they can see it, they all know it's there, and that money is, I'm not sure what the game plan is yet with that, but this is what I do know, is that the Pentagon formed a task force which is going to go into the banks and enforce the actual laws, amazing, to make sure that banks don't try to steal this money anymore. I would imagine they'll get their own money back as well. And this, by the way, is what Kim told me in maybe our 4th conversation a year and a half ago, that what it would take is for the military to go into the banks and seize control.
I think it was 1979 is when I appeared in Project Looking Glass, not the only one, as one of several. And it basically described all of the things that I was going to do in this video that these people saw. And if you know who used to run Project Looking Glass, one group ran it, and another group were the actual seers, I guess you would say. And so there were 12 women. These were the original 12 women from the Thule Society, Thule. And if all 12 actually saw the same thing, then it was 99% certain that it would come to pass. So in the late 70s, early 80s, the CIA and a number of other groups saw all of these people that were going to make this change in these videos. I call them the file people. So there are people that are supposed to do certain things, and then there are duplicates. So in other words, there are additional people that can perform that same function. During the late 70s and early 80s, the CIA ran a DNA program throughout the world looking for these people. They were identified by face and by DNA. And I happen to be one of those people.